seems now that you have spent something like 5 decades working in the Solomons.
That's right.
I wonder if you can tell us about the Baha'i community in the Solomon Islands. If someone's to ask you, what is the nature of the Baha'i community? What do the Baha'is do? Who are the Baha'is in the Solomons? How do you explain the community?
Well, there's the purpose of the Blums going there was to develop the Baha'i community, and it took a couple of years to establish a community, and that came about through their example again, as I mentioned, that they treated people completely equally as the Baha'i Faith teachers. We're all, regardless of colour and religion and race, we're equal, and this wasn't in a British colonial service, was not a feature of the society with the Europeans and the indigenous Solomon Islanders. So, whereas the Blums came and embraced them, brought them into their homes, and through example, were able to make an impact. And through that, the faith gradually spread. And Mr. Blum and Mrs. Blum did much to help people, and went out of their way, which was again unusual. And so they created a lot of interest. So this information went around and people wanted to know, and they learned it was a new religion and what was it, and established, gradually people came to understand it. What they liked was that, here was a religion that didn't make a difference. The Baha'i teaching is for unity and togetherness. They found this very attractive in the fact that they were treated so equally. It was just a natural gradual. And what's happened over the years is they themselves, and more so in recent years, their children have become educated because all of these people would have come either from what was a non-Christian background, a pagan. They became Baha'is, they were attracted to it, and people from Christian faith, because it is essentially a Christian country, and they then have understood, and in fact in learning about the faith, one of the teachings of the faith is independent investigation of truth. They wanted to read, and there's many wonderful writings, and especially prayers, they wanted to read them for themselves. And so this, over 30, 40, 50 years, you've seen a maturity, as we all do, as we grow up. So the Baha'i Faith has established itself. It has brought a sense of purpose. They have an innate common sense, because the people of the Pacific, the Solomon Islanders, still are in touch with their Creator. They still have a spiritual resonance. And they could see this in the Baha'i Faith, this resident sort of brought them. It was a heart-to-heart process.
And I think the other thing that's very appealing now is that they see the disintegration of some of the services and some of the, where there was a good functioning local spiritual assembly, a Baha'i local spiritual assembly, which is 9 people who manage the affairs of the community in a group where there's a group of people, Baha'is, they can take over that role to a degree and organise. They're not the government, but they can help organise services and make sure that the children get educated, and there's a whole series of educational material through the Baha'i Faith, and they can assist, and they can become the community coordinators, and this is quite valuable. When
they get empowered.
Yes.
What it is, you have people who perhaps traditionally across the world, the Europeans tend to say they're not educated and not have the capacity. But with education and an ability to take into control, which the Baha'i community has at a local level, this, as Keithie mentioned, the 9 members of a local administrative body, then they're in charge of their own affairs. There's not Europeans telling them what to do. They're consulting, and they're very good at consulting. We, as our society, are not so good at consulting and listening to other ideas. They have this ability already. And the process of voting is that all people over 21, male or female, are eligible to serve, and you'll find that most of these local assembly and the National Assembly, which governs the national body that governs the affairs of the Solomon Islands, has men and women on it. And if you look at the National Parliament of the Solomons, for instance, there's only been 1 woman ever, and the second one, so it's very out of 50 people. So these are the things that they value, and aid institutions and people like that want to work with people at local level, and this is where they are learning to see these assemblies can play a role.